Chapter 1. A familiar silence before the storm. "You coming to bed, babe?" I asked, brushing my teeth. Natalie sat cross-legged on the far side of our king-sized bed, illuminated only by the pale blue glow of her phone screen. She didn't look up. "In a minute," she said flatly. "I've got a few emails to answer." I lingered in the doorway of our bathroom, toothbrush in hand, watching her thumbs tap rapidly against the screen. Her expression was unreadable, neutral, almost mechanical. It used to be that when I asked her to bed, she'd smile, pat the empty side, and say something like, "Only if you're bringing cuddles with you." But not anymore. Lately, everything felt muted. Our laughter had dulled. Our conversations felt like formalities, and our touches, when they even happened, felt colder than the sheets we slept on. I spat the foam into the sink and rinsed my mouth, my reflection staring back at me like a stranger. Same worn-out eyes, same calloused hands, same oil-stained t-shirt from work. I had just come off a 12-hour shift at the auto plant. My back ached, my feet throbbed, but worst of all was the weight in my chest, the quiet dread that had taken up permanent residence there. I crawled into bed alone, the mattress dipping slightly under my weight. Natalie didn't move. She stayed perched like a gargoyle, hunched over her screen, her face bathed in that damn digital light. I turned to face the wall, pulling the blanket up to my shoulders. I told myself not to care. Told myself she was just stressed. "Work had been rough lately," she said. "New management, new projects, late meetings." I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to. But the truth was louder than my denial. Her phone used to lie face up on the counter. Now, it was always screened down. Notifications used to pop up openly, texts from friends, funny memes. Now, they were all muted or labeled work update from a blank contact. She changed her lock screen password 2 months ago, after an update, she claimed. And a lingerie I'd bought her last Christmas? Still in the drawer, tags on, untouched. I fell asleep to the soft clicking of her nails tapping the glass screen. The next morning, she was already out of bed when I woke up. The smell of fresh coffee wafted down the hallway, but the comfort that usually brought was gone. I pulled on a clean shirt and headed to the kitchen. Natalie stood by the counter, sipping from her favorite mug, the one that read, "World's Okayest Wife." I had bought it as a joke on our 3rd anniversary. She didn't smile when she saw me. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she echoed, eyes glued to her phone again. I opened the fridge. Inside were a few eggs, some orange juice, and a nearly empty carton of almond milk, hers. I grabbed the OJ and poured myself a glass, watching her from the corner of my eye. "You working late again tonight?" I asked. "Yeah, strategy meeting with the team. Might run a little long." I nodded slowly, saying nothing. She used to explain things, tell me names, make jokes about her coworkers. Now her answers were clipped, vague. The team, the boss, the project. Always like she was trying to give just enough, but not too much. I finished my juice and set the glass down. "You've been dressing up more lately," I said, trying to sound light. Not that I'm complaining, just noticing. That finally got her eyes off the screen. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, head tilted slightly, voice cool. "Nothing. Just, you've been spending more time getting ready than usual. New perfume, new heels. I like it, just didn't know you were still trying to impress me." A pause, then a smirk. "Maybe I'm just doing it for me," she replied. "Is that so hard to believe?" I forced a chuckle. Of course not, but it didn't feel right. Nothing did. That weekend, we went to my mother's house for dinner. Natalie insisted we bring a bottle of Merlot, which was odd. My mom hated red wine. Still, Natalie was in a good mood. Too good. She laughed too loud at Carol's dry jokes, touched her arm too often, complimented her cheap throw pillows like they were designer. Carol, meanwhile, acted like she was seeing Natalie for the first time, gushing about her like some beauty pageant mom. "You're lucky to have a woman like her, Aaron. Don't screw it up." The words stung more than I cared to admit. I glanced up at her, trying to read between the lines. Natalie was smiling, but it wasn't for me. Later that night, back home, I found myself staring at her reflection while she took off her earrings at the vanity. "You and Mom seem to be getting along," I said. She glanced at me through the mirror. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you used to roll your eyes every time we visited. Tonight, you looked like you were best friends." She shrugged, her tone dismissive. Maybe I'm growing up. Or maybe she finally realized I'm not going anywhere. I didn't respond. I just watched her brush her hair with long, slow strokes, like something out of a movie. Everything about her had become more deliberate lately. Every movement calculated, every word rehearsed. She stood, stretched, and walked past me without a touch, without a glance. I'm going to stay up a bit. Got a couple more things to finish, she said. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart sinking. You coming to bed, babe? I asked, brushing my teeth. She didn't look up from her phone. In a minute. I've got a few emails to answer. Chapter 2. The beginning of the end. It started with a whisper. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had gotten up around 12:30 a.m. because I forgot to take the trash out. The city had started giving fines for missed pickups. I slipped down the hallway barefoot, rubbing my eyes, quietly cursing myself for forgetting again. That's when I heard her. Natalie's voice, soft and low, too low. I stopped. The door to her home office was cracked just slightly, letting out a sliver of light. She usually left it open, but this time it was like she almost wanted it closed. Like she didn't want to be disturbed, but didn't want to make it obvious either. I was about to call out, but then I heard her say it. I can't stop thinking about last night. Her voice was syrupy, flirtatious, the way she used to talk to me back when we were first dating, when she wanted me. Before her touch became routine. Before her smile faded from habit to obligation. There was a pause, and then a light chuckle. My heart began to thud like someone had slammed it in a drawer. I stepped closer, quietly like I wasn't supposed to, but my damn toe hit the hallway baseboard. Thud. The laugh stopped. Silence. Then, I'll call you later, she whispered. No, don't text. Not tonight. Click. The screen went black. The door opened wider, and there she was, Natalie, standing there in her bathrobe, holding her phone like it was a loaded weapon. We locked eyes for half a second. Hey, she said casually, as if nothing had happened. Couldn't sleep? I looked past her into the office. The laptop was closed. The room was dark behind her. Just came to take the trash out, I muttered. She smiled, that fake, painted-on smile I was beginning to hate. Thanks, babe. Then she walked past me, barefoot, unconcerned, and disappeared into the kitchen like nothing at all was out of place. But I stood there, frozen. That one line, I can't stop thinking about last night, kept replaying in my mind, loud as sirens. The next day, I didn't bring it up. I watched her as she scrolled through her phone over breakfast. She smiled once at something she read, and then quickly cleared the screen. She didn't notice me watching. Or maybe she didn't care. At work, I kept checking my phone, wondering if she was texting him, whoever he was. I didn't have proof. Just a whisper. Just a sentence. But it was like a worm had crawled into my brain and wouldn't stop writhing. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was talking to a friend. Maybe they were joking. Maybe I misheard it. But deep down, I knew better. Over the next few days, I started to notice everything. She never left her phone unattended anymore. Not on the kitchen counter while cooking. Not on the bathroom sink while showering. Always tucked close, like a secret she didn't want to spill. She changed her phone's wallpaper. Used to be a picture of us at the lake. Now it was just a gradient color, sterile and bland. She was working late more often. Once or twice a week at first, then 4 nights in a row. When I offered to drop off dinner at her office, she said, "No need. We already ordered in." We, not I. Even the way she dressed started to shift. Tighter blouses. Heels I hadn't seen in over a year. A new shade of lipstick that left faint pink smudges on her wine glass, but none on me. I finally broke one night while we were brushing our teeth side by side. "Who were you talking to the other night?" I asked. Natalie turned her head slowly, her mouth full of foam. "What night?" "Around 12:30. You were in your office, whispering on the phone. Said something about last night." She rinsed and spat. "Wow," she said, wiping her mouth. "Are you spying on me now?" "No, I was just walking by. I heard you." She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So what? I can't have a private conversation. Not when it sounds like a confession." She scoffed and rolled her eyes. "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" She took a step closer, her voice sharpening. "Maybe you're the one with the guilty conscience. That why you're projecting all this on me?" I stared at her, stunned. She knew I'd never cheated, never even come close. I was working overtime, trying to save for a vacation. She said she didn't want any more. I spent more hours fixing the leaky basement she insisted on remodeling than I did with my own friends. But she said anyway, calmly, smoothly, like she'd practiced it in her head already. Gaslighting 101. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my arms folded behind my head, Natalie's quiet breathing beside me, sounding like it belonged to a stranger. I got up and went to the garage. Dust coated the shelves, but I found an old leather-bound notebook I hadn't touched in years. It had been a gift from Natalie, ironically. On the inside flap, she had written, "So you never forget the little things. Love R." I grabbed a pen and opened it to the first blank page. Day 1, 12:30 a.m., office call. Whispered, "I can't stop thinking about last night." Claimed emails. Laughed. Hung up fast. Day 3, left for a late work meeting. Returned 2:17 a.m. No explanation. Lipstick smudged. Avoided kiss. Day 5, changed phone password. Locked screen immediately after each use. Claimed new policy at work. It became a ritual. Every night, I wrote down the inconsistencies, the timing, the looks, the lies. I didn't trust my memory anymore because she made me question it. But the notebook wouldn't forget. I began tracking her location using the Find My app we'd both agreed to enable years ago. Suddenly, it didn't work. Location not available. Why I brought up, she said it must be a glitch. I asked her to turn it back on. She refused. "I don't need you checking up on me like I'm a child," she said. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded and added it to the journal. I started withdrawing, not to punish her, just to protect myself. My laughter became hollow, my affection measured. I stopped reaching for her in bed. She didn't notice, or didn't care. At work, my coworkers joked that I looked like a ghost. I said I was just tired. Truth was, I was unraveling, questioning everything, wondering if 5 years of marriage could have been a lie, if I was losing my mind, or if something darker was happening. Chapter 3. A Mother's Betrayal. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday. I wasn't even meant to be home. The plant had an unexpected electrical issue and shut down all afternoon shifts. A rare early out, something the guys celebrated with beers or long naps. I figured I'd surprise Natalie with coffee and maybe talk. Or try to, at least. I stopped by her favorite place, Hazel Bean Cafe, and picked up her usual. Iced hazelnut latte, 2 pumps, no whip. I even got her one of those cinnamon scones she always raved about but claimed made her feel fat. She'd eat the whole thing anyway. As I pulled into our driveway, a familiar vehicle caught my eye. My mother's car. Carol. Now, that was unexpected. She lived across town and didn't visit without calling first. I figured maybe she dropped by to bring Natalie something. Those two had gotten oddly close lately. What started as polite civility had shifted to inside jokes and secretive glances. Carol had always been judgmental of me, but she used to keep it subtle. Now, not so much. I got out of the truck quietly, careful not to slam the door. I wasn't trying to sneak in, not really. I just didn't want to disrupt anything. If they were mid-conversation, I could knock or call out from the hallway. The front door was slightly ajar, probably from Carol forgetting to pull it all the way shut. I stepped inside. Then I heard them. Laughter. From the kitchen. Not just a giggle or two. No, this was playful, unfiltered, like 2 teenage girls gossiping over wine. Except it was my wife. And my mother. I crept forward, heartbeat picking up, every step a prayer that I was misreading the situation. The hallway gave way to a clear line of sight into the kitchen. Natalie had her back turned, standing at the island with a glass of white wine in hand. Carol sat at one of the stools, her long red nails wrapped around a stemless glass, her hair pinned back like she'd come from a salon. I was maybe 10 feet away, and then I heard it, clear as day. "Carol, so, how was your date, dear? Is he a better lover than my loser son?" I froze. My breath hitched. The world stopped. The clink of glass on countertop followed. Natalie had set her wine down. "Natalie." "Yes, Mom, and thank you for setting us up." I didn't know what I was missing. Silence. No hesitation. No apology. Just matter-of-fact betrayal. And laughter. It was like someone had pressed a blade against my spine and twisted it slowly. I could feel my hands tremble, my knees weaken. My own mother, my wife. My mind screamed for me to barge in, to demand an explanation, to throw something, break something, say something. But I didn't. I stood there for another breathless second, taking in the scene like a ghost witnessing his own murder. Their backs still turned, blissfully unaware that their words had shattered something in me that would never heal right. I backed away, step by step, silently. The hallway warped around me as I moved. My chest was heavy, vision blurred, but I never made a sound. The coffee cup was still in my hand, the plastic lid slightly bent from the pressure of my grip. Outside, the air felt thinner, sharper. I climbed into my truck and just sat there. My ears rang. My own mother called me a loser. My wife thanked her for setting up an affair. I wasn't a man in that moment. I was wreckage, smoke, a memory folding into itself. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even drive away immediately. I just sat in that truck with the engine off, watching the sunlight fade from the dashboard, the cinnamon scones slowly growing stale in its wax paper bag. Inside, I imagined them still laughing, toasting their little scheme, maybe texting him, the man who apparently gave her what I never could, the man my mother handpicked to replace her son. I couldn't comprehend it, not all at once. The betrayal felt too large, too intimate, like a cruel joke with no punchline. I finally drove off after about 15 minutes. Not fast, not slow, just numb. And as I pulled away from that house, our house, I knew I wouldn't be going back the same. I went to a diner about 20 minutes outside of town, ordered a black coffee and a piece of pie I didn't touch. The waitress smiled and asked if I needed anything else. I nodded politely and said I was fine. I wasn't. I sat there in that booth for 2 hours, watching cars pass by outside, watching people live lives that hadn't just imploded. Part of me still didn't believe what I heard, but I replayed it again and again, and there was no mistaking it. How was your date, dear? Is he a better lover than my loser son? Yes, Mom, and thank you for setting us up. Those words would haunt me, etched into bone, burned into memory. I thought back to all the weird moments, the late nights, the fake smiles, the overly tight bond between Natalie and Carol. It all made sense now. Every moment of suspicion, every red flag. They hadn't just been signs of infidelity. They were signs of conspiracy. And I had been the fool, walking blind into a carefully woven lie. I looked down at my reflection in the diner's metal napkin holder. Hollow eyes, stubble from days of neglect. A man robbed of his dignity by the two women he trusted most. But I didn't cry, didn't confront, didn't scream into the void. No, I burned the moment into memory, word for word, emotion for emotion. Because if I knew anything about myself, it was this. I may have lost the moment, but I would not lose the war. Chapter 4. The Silent Exit. I didn't slam a door. I didn't flip a table. I didn't demand answers or scream in her face about the betrayal. No, that kind of reaction would have satisfied them. It would have confirmed whatever narrative they had spun about me behind closed doors, emotional, fragile, weak. Instead, I made a decision. I would walk away silent, but not empty-handed. That night, I drove back home under a gray sky choked with stars I no longer cared about. The street was quiet. Our house looked exactly the same, warm porch light glowing, curtains drawn in the living room. Natalie's SUV parked out front like nothing had changed. But I entered without a sound. The front door creaked, and for a moment, I thought they might be in the kitchen again, Carol and Natalie, sipping wine and planning my replacement like two smug aristocrats. But the house was still. Natalie was asleep upstairs, lights off. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. I walked past the photos on the wall. Our wedding picture. A beach trip to Oregon. Her parents' anniversary party. I stared at them, not with sadness, but detachment, like they belonged to a life someone else lived. In our bedroom, I stood at the foot of the bed and looked at her. Natalie was curled up on her side, one arm tucked under the pillow, the other around the body pillow she used when she claimed her back was too sore for cuddling. Her mouth hung, slightly open, lips parted, breathing shallow. She looked peaceful. I hated her for it. I opened the closet and pulled down my old military duffel bag. Natalie had always made fun of it, called it ugly, outdated. You could get something sleek from Amazon, she'd said once. But this bag had seen real storms. It had carried me through years when I had nothing but grit and muscle to offer. It would carry me now. I packed slowly, deliberately. A few jeans, work boots, enough shirts to last a week, my shaving kit, a spare phone charger. I left the dress shirts. The cufflinks she'd bought me for our second anniversary. The cologne she said turned her on. All of it stayed behind. I didn't want her scent anywhere near me again. I checked my watch. 2:21 a.m. Time for the trap. Months ago, during a rabbit hole binge on a survivalist forum, I had read about makeshift surveillance tools for domestic exposure cases. One post had gone viral. Some guy used blacklight reactive ink on a bed frame to trigger a motion-activated camera hidden in a smoke detector. Another guy used a chemical powder to mark sheets for post-affair analysis. I adapted my own version. I had already purchased the supplies weeks earlier, back when the suspicion first gnawed at my gut. Not because I was paranoid, but because I knew one day the truth would need proof. I opened a drawer under the bed and pulled out the small black pouch. Inside was the marker and the matchbox-sized sensor camera, already synced to an app on a burner phone I kept stashed in the garage. Carefully, I lifted the edge of the fitted sheet on Natalie's side. I drew a nearly invisible X in the center of the mattress, only visible under blacklight. I then placed the camera, disguised inside a carbon monoxide sensor casing, directly above the bed on the ceiling panel. It would only trigger if movement occurred in that area of the bed, and only under the right conditions. Let them lie in that bed together, I muttered under my breath, and the bed will tell the story. Back downstairs, I left my house key on the table next to the untouched hazelnut candle she never burned. I stared at it for a long time, the cinnamon scoon memory still faint on my tongue. That Tuesday morning, I thought she might smile if I brought her favorite drink. Instead, she gave her body to another man, one my own mother handpicked, and thank her for the privilege. At 3:07 a.m., I slid behind the wheel of my truck. The engine purred to life. The neighborhood was still asleep, the kind of sleep I'd never have again. I looked up once at our bedroom window. Dark. No curtain movement. No ghost of guilt haunting the glass. Just a woman dreaming peacefully, unaware her world had just shifted. I didn't leave a note. Didn't give her the satisfaction of a final argument or a desperate question. I'd said all I ever needed to say in silence. I drove north, off the main road, into the dim city fringe where old motels lined the highway like forgotten tombstones. I pulled into one called Sunset Pines, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the fog. The room smelled of bleach and regret. Perfect. I paid in cash, registered under the name Alan Poe. Just for fun. Inside the room, I sat on the edge of the mattress and took out the burner phone. It showed the camera status. Active. Ready. A green dot blinked next to the bedroom feed. Good. I powered it off and slid it into the drawer. Then I opened my personal phone and began the process online. Attorney review, divorce paperwork request, local filing procedures. It wasn't emotional. It was administrative. Mechanical. Like unscrewing a broken pipe before it floods the basement. I turned off location sharing. Disabled access to our shared photo cloud. I removed her Face ID from my banking app and changed all passwords. Cold. Efficient. Surgical. I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling for hours, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the occasional car pass outside like distant thunder. This was no longer heartbreak. This was war prep. If they think I'm weak, they'll soon learn the truth. Chapter 5. 6 months of silence. The silence was a strange kind of companion. At first, it was brutal, like being locked in a soundproof room while your soul screamed for justice. The first week away from that house felt like withdrawal. I'd wake up in the motel bed, drenched in sweat, thinking I'd hear Natalie's voice next to me, only to find cheap beige curtains and a buzzing air vent. But eventually, the silence became a balm. Natalie tried reaching out exactly 4 days after I left. She texted once. Natalie, where are you? What the hell is going on? I didn't respond. Then came a missed calls. At first, 1 or 2. Then 10 in a row. Aaron, please. Talk to me. This isn't funny. You can't just disappear. Oh, but I could. After the fifth day, the text shifted in tone, less panic, more control. If you're trying to make a point, you've made it. Grow up and come home. You owe me an explanation, you coward. That one made me laugh. She wanted me to explain. I blocked her. I found a small apartment on the edge of town above a garage, owned by an old Vietnam vet named Joe. He was quiet, didn't ask questions, and let me pay in cash. He offered me a beer on day one and said, "You look like a man with ghosts." I didn't reply, just clinked the bottle. By week 2, I had a routine. Work, gym, reading, journaling. I signed up for therapy. I needed to rebuild from the inside out, not just for my sanity, but to prepare for what I knew was coming. Revenge wasn't something I rushed. I treated it like an engineering project. Every screw mattered. Every wire had to be perfect. One misstep, and the whole system collapses. The burner phone stayed in a locked box in my closet. I only checked it late at night. Headphones in, lights off. At first, it was just normal footage, Natalie sleeping alone, scrolling on her phone, tossing and turning. Days passed, then weeks. I grew bored. I started to think maybe she wasn't as reckless as I thought, but she was just waiting for the right night. It happened in the 3rd month. I almost didn't check that night's footage until I noticed the camera's data had logged a 3-hour trigger window. That had never happened before. I opened the clip. There she was, Natalie, wearing the red lace lingerie I'd bought her 2 years ago, the same one she claimed made her feel cheap. Not for him, though. And there he was, too. Brent. I recognized him instantly, tall, muscular, square jaw, gym tank clinging to his chiseled body like it was painted on. Brent used to be my mom's personal trainer. I'd met him at her birthday brunch once. Thought he seemed arrogant. Now I had a word for it. Predator. He kissed Natalie like she was a drug. She kissed him like she owed him everything. I watched it all, every second. But it was what happened 5 minutes in that turned my stomach to cement. The bedroom door opened again, and Carol, my mother, walked in, wearing nothing but a silk robe. She laughed. Natalie laughed too. Brent didn't stop. He just looked over and smiled like this was normal. And Carol, she climbed onto the bed. I paused the video there. My hand was trembling so badly, I dropped the phone on the carpet. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat down, stared at the wall, and breathed like I just run a marathon underwater. I played the rest, if only to burn the images into my memory. No denials. No excuses. No ambiguity. Natalie and Carol, my wife and my mother, had planned everything. I remembered that awful kitchen conversation now, with chilling clarity. "How was your date, dear?" "Better than your loser son. Thank you for setting us up." They weren't just sleeping with the same man. They were sharing him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the desk in my apartment with the lights off, just the screen's soft glow lighting the room. I opened a fresh page in the digital journal I'd been keeping. Day 98. Footage confirmed. Rachel plus MOM plus Brent. Triggered cam 10:27 p.m. All three in bed. No shame. No more doubt. I stared at those words for a long time, and then I opened another tab. Bank records. Back when things started to go south, I had installed a stealth backup program on our shared financial accounts. I needed to know if she was spending on someone else. I hadn't looked too deeply until now. What I found made my blood boil. Regular Venmo, transfers labeled massage, supplements, trainer sessions. All to Brent. Credit card charges at boutique hotels, wine bars, lingerie shops. She hadn't just been cheating, she'd been funding it. With our money. With my overtime pay. I went deeper. Emails. Cloud backups. I even hacked into her Google Photos using an old recovery method she had once used for me. Everything she thought she'd deleted? Still there. Selfies in hotel rooms. Bed mirror shots. One of Brent in the mirror behind her, holding her hips like she was his prize. And one of Carol. In the background. In the same room. They were proud of it. Proud. In the 5th month, I took a DNA test kit and mailed it with a cheek swab for my supposed son, Caleb. Age 6, he had once spilled his juice on my old leather chair and cried until I forgave him. I had loved that kid like he was mine. But something in Natalie's eyes when she talked about his smile, just like Brent's, had always bothered me. The test results came back a few weeks later. I didn't even open the envelope. I already knew. Chapter 6. Courtroom bombshell. The morning of the court hearing felt unusually still, like the air was holding its breath. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in my modest apartment, adjusting the collar of my charcoal gray suit. The same suit I wore to my wedding. Back then, it had symbolized a new chapter. Today, it would close one. The paperwork had been filed quietly, no warning, no calls, no preamble. I hired a process server to hand Natalie the divorce petition in front of her Pilates class. I'd paid extra for the location and timing. The look on her face, I was told, was priceless. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not even a text. But now she would see everything I'd held back. The courthouse was a beige building with tired bricks and fading American flags. Inside, I found my attorney, Marissa Hale, waiting in the hallway. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, wore heels like they were weapons. She brought a lawyer, Marissa said without looking up from her tablet. Some flashy guy in a navy suit. Probably thinks he's in a Netflix drama. I glanced toward the benches across the hall. There she was, Natalie, sitting in silence, fidgeting with her phone. Her eyes darted between her lawyer and the courtroom doors. She looked thinner, more tired. Her makeup couldn't hide the damage. Guilt looked heavier on her than I imagined. And next to her, just arriving Carol, wearing a faux fur coat in the middle of summer. Red lipstick, sunglasses, and an air of false importance. She didn't even glance my way. Typical. Marissa looked at me. You sure you want to do it like this? Could have settled. Avoided public record. I shook my head. She made it public the moment she humiliated me behind my back. Let's begin. Inside the courtroom, the judge, a gray-bearded man named Judge Whitaker, sat behind a wooden bench like a weary school principal tired of teenagers and drama. Case 2025, DV 3147, Aaron Brooks versus Natalie Brooks. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Both parties present. Present, I said, standing up. Natalie stood too, voice softer. Present, Your Honor. Her lawyer, some guy named Bryce with 2 white teeth and a smug expression, launched into a defensive opening. Your Honor, my client is confused and hurt. Mr. Brooks vanished for months without contact or warning, then served divorce papers out of the blue. This proceeding is nothing more than emotional retaliation. I almost laughed. Marissa didn't flinch. We'll be submitting documentation, video evidence, and a paternity report, Your Honor. The emotional retaliation claim will be addressed momentarily. Natalie blinked. I caught it, just a flash of confusion. She didn't know what I had. Perfect. Marissa pulled out a thin folder and placed it on the table like she was serving a meal. Exhibits A through D. Blacklight-triggered video footage. Timestamp texts. Financial records. A paternity test. Judge Whitaker adjusted his glasses. Proceed. We played the footage on the court screen first. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly, and the silence was palpable. There she was, Natalie, climbing into the bed I had left behind, laughing, wearing the red lace I once believed was just for me. Then Brent entered the frame. Then Carol. The laughter, the touching, the bedroom that used to be mine. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Natalie's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this is a blatant invasion of privacy. She didn't object to the invasion when she let herself be filmed, Marissa said coldly. The camera was installed by Mr. Brooks in his legal residence before he moved out. No laws broken. Natalie covered her mouth. Carol sat stone-faced, lips pinched. The footage ended. The lights came back on. Nobody spoke for a full 15 seconds. Then the judge cleared his throat. Miss Brooks, do you dispute the authenticity of this video? Natalie's voice trembled. I didn't know. We didn't mean. I believe you meant every second of it, I said calmly. Her eyes locked on mine for the first time in months. I didn't look away. How could you do this? She whispered. You really asking me that? I said flatly. After what I just showed this room? Her lawyer tried to pivot. Your Honor, we still contend this has no bearing on the division of assets. Oh, but it does, Marissa cut in smoothly. Especially when we introduce Exhibit A. She handed the judge another sealed envelope. What's this? He asked. Paternity test, Your Honor. Conducted independently. The minor child, Caleb Brooks, presumed son of Mr. Brooks, is in fact not biologically related to him in any capacity. Another gasp. Natalie stood up, panicking. No, no, that's not. You didn't have it right. He's still your son, Aaron. Is he? I asked. I pulled out a photograph, me and Caleb fishing at the lake, one of my favorite memories, and set it face down on the table. You let me raise him, knowing the truth. You used him as a shield. Her voice cracked. It didn't mean anything. Brent was he was just your mother's trainer? Just another toy you two shared like I never mattered. Carol stood up suddenly, her chair screeching. This is slander. You have no idea what kind of pressure I was under to get out, the judge said sharply. She blinked. Excuse me. Out of my courtroom, Ms. Brooks. You are not on trial, but your conduct here is repugnant. You're dismissed. Carol's jaw tightened, but she grabbed her coat and stormed out without another word, red-faced, heels clicking like gunshots. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Brooks, given a fraudulent paternity claim and overwhelming evidence of marital misconduct, you are entitled to full protection under equitable distribution. Do you wish to press charges for fraud? The room held its breath. Natalie's hands were shaking, her face pale, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I looked at her for a long moment. Not with hate, just indifference. Not yet, I said. Let karma play its hand first. Chapter 7. The Fallout. It was 2 days after the hearing when my phone lit up with a call from an all-too-familiar number. Carol. I stared at the screen as it buzzed across the table, practically daring me to answer. I shouldn't have, but something inside me, curiosity, maybe a hint of leftover rage, said I needed to hear what she had to say. I swiped. Aaron, she snapped, her voice sharp with venom. How dare you? How could you do that to her, you bastard? I leaned back in my chair, letting the venom wash over me like a breeze that couldn't cut anymore. Nice to hear your voice, Mom, I said flatly. Didn't catch you on your back this time, did I? Don't get smart with me, she hissed. You humiliated her. You humiliated me. That courtroom video, everyone's talking. Family, friends, church, everyone. Good, I said. Means the right people are finally seeing who you really are. She loved you, she screeched. That did it. I laughed. Hard. That bitter, guttural kind of laugh that comes from someplace hollow and scorched. Love me, I said. You mean the guy you called a loser while helping her get railed in my bed? The other end of the line went dead quiet. You were never man enough for her, she spat after a beat, voice shaking. And you were never a mother to me. I replied, my tone dropping cold. But don't worry, I fixed both problems. Permanently. I hung up, blocked the number. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence reclaim the room. No rage, no sadness, just a deep, calming kind of clarity. She was out of my life. For good. A week later, the ripple turned into a wave. It started when an anonymous user uploaded a short clip, just 30 seconds, onto a private betrayal survivor forum. Just enough to set the fire. Natalie, Brent, Carol, all three in my bed, doing things I wouldn't describe to my worst enemy. I hadn't uploaded it myself, of course. That would have been petty. But someone with access to the footage, let's just say I knew a guy who knew a guy, found it therapeutic to accidentally hit the send button. It didn't take long to spread. People have this morbid curiosity. They'll watch the worst parts of humanity if it comes wrapped in the skin of someone they know. And everyone knew Natalie. Friends, neighbors, coworkers. She was the golden wife, the smart one, the PDA organizer with the toned arms and flawless Instagram smiles. Now, she was the wife from the tape. Texts started rolling in from mutual acquaintances. Dude, is that real? Bro, I'm so sorry. Holy shit. I showed my wife. She cried, said you deserve better. And then the cherry on top. Natalie got dropped from the school board. Carol hasn't shown up to church in 2 Sundays. Pastor asked if she was sick. We all know why. I didn't respond to any of them. Didn't need to. The fire had started, and I was just sitting back with a cold beer, watching it burn. Natalie tried reaching out again, this time from a different number. The message was pathetic. Please, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought it was just a phase. I stared at the screen. A phase? That's what you call my absence. Like me watching the woman I loved get split between her side piece and my mother was something I'd eventually just get over. I blocked the new number without replying. Brent, of course, did what all cowards do when the spotlight gets hot. He ghosted. Not even a formal goodbye. Just disappeared. Natalie's Instagram dropped from smiling brunch selfies and travel reels to total silence. Her TikTok account was deleted. I heard from someone in her circle, one of the few neutral ones, that Brent had moved on. Told her she was too much drama and bad for his brand. The man treated her like a gym sponsorship he could cancel when the PR got messy. She'd thrown away her marriage for that. Carol's reputation was scorched beyond repair. I heard whispers that she'd been politely asked to resign from her position on the Homeowners Association board. Her charity club paused her monthly invites. And her group of whining gossip friends? Yeah, they dropped her harder than a flaming casserole. People who once gushed over her taste in scarves now avoided her like she carried a social disease. Couldn't happen to a better pair. I kept going, quietly, focused. Therapy continued. The gym became more than just a coping mechanism. It was a forge. Every rep, every set, every drop of sweat was a declaration. I'm not broken. I am rebuilding. I wasn't doing it to win her back. Hell no. I was doing it to reclaim every piece of myself they tried to take. Piece by piece, I was becoming someone better, stronger, sharper, and I did it without needing revenge to make me whole. Because the best part? I didn't have to destroy them. They did it themselves. Chapter 8. The transformation. The old version of me would have stayed, would have made excuses, would have tried to fix the unfixable. But that version of me had been burned to ash in the fire she lit. And in the 6 months that followed, something better rose from it. After the courtroom dust settled, I did the one thing that truly felt like forward motion. I left. I packed everything I still cared about, tools, my journal, a few boxes of books, and a guitar I hadn't touched since college, and I hit the road. Destination? Nowhere familiar. I landed in Asheville, North Carolina. Mountain town. New energy. Nobody knew my name, and that was the beauty of it. I rented a loft apartment above a bookstore with exposed brick, creaky wooden floors, and a giant window that faced the sunrise. Clean slate. New rhythm. By day, I worked construction management for a mid-sized company that respected skill over small talk. By night, I hit the gym hard, 6 days a week, focus consistent. No distractions. No pity parties. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. I dropped 30 pounds of stress weight, replaced it with lean muscle and clarity. I looked in the mirror one night and didn't just see a better body, I saw a better man. One who didn't flinch at the past. One who didn't ask for permission to heal. I started dating again after 4 months, cautiously. The first woman I met was a sweet librarian named Haley, quiet laugh, dark eyes, the kind of person who didn't push. We had coffee, talked about books, hiking, favorite podcasts. It felt good to be seen again. But when she reached across the table and touched my hand with warmth, something in me twitched. A reflex, like an old scar being pressed. I didn't pull away, but I knew I wasn't ready to let anyone in completely. Not yet. The next few dates were similar, pleasant, light, but I kept my walls high. I didn't make promises. I didn't fake readiness. I was honest with them and with myself. I've been through hell, I told one date, and I'm not sure the gates are fully closed behind me yet. Most respected that. A few didn't. Either way, I stayed in control of my peace. Meanwhile, Natalie tried. God, she tried. It started with a single email. Subject line: please read. I'm not asking for anything. Just to be heard. I didn't open it at first. Just stared at it. 3 days later, I clicked. It was long, rambling, apologetic in tone, but twisted in structure. She talked about her childhood, how her father was never around, how her mother, Carol, pushed her into perfection, how she always felt not enough, like she was performing every day just to be loved. Then came the rationalization. When Brent started giving me attention, I felt like I could finally breathe, like someone saw me for me. I know that doesn't excuse what I did, but it explains it. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Aaron. I was just lost. And finally, the begging. I think about you every night, about the sound of your laugh when you were half asleep, about how you made me feel safe. I ruined everything. I know that now. But I need you to know I did love you. I still do. She signed it. Forever regretful, Natalie. I closed the email. Didn't reply. More came after that. One every few weeks. Some full of guilt. Others clawing for understanding. A few try to share news. Caleb misses you. Or my mom's been having a hard time. As if any of that would soften the damage. They all ended the same way. Please just say something. Even if it's to tell me goodbye. But I'd already said goodbye. The moment I walked out of that house at 3 o'clock a.m. with my dignity intact and a camera above the bed, I had closed that chapter for good. One night, I sat out on the fire escape of my loft, sipping black coffee in the cold, watching dawn bleed into the sky. I thought about the man I used to be, always giving, always trying, always afraid to lose what he loved, even when what he loved was poisoning him. That man was dead. What stood in his place was a man who had found something rarer than revenge. Self-respect. I didn't need closure. I didn't need her tears. I didn't even need her to suffer. I just needed her gone. And now, she was. Chapter 9. The Last Confrontation. A full year had passed since I left that house in the middle of the night with nothing but my backpack, a plan, and a heart in pieces. I hadn't been back to town once. Not for holidays. Not for birthdays. Not even when Uncle Mitch died. God rest him. But when my cousin Jake sent a handwritten invitation to his wedding, something about it felt right. Jake had always been solid. One of the few people who never picked a side when things fell apart. Will mean a lot if you came, man. You've been missed. So I went. The wedding was held in a rustic lodge just outside my hometown. Old wood beams, warm string lights. Laughter echoing from every corner of the banquet hall. People greeted me with cautious smiles, some with hugs, most with quiet disbelief. Aaron? Man, you look different. Stronger. You look good. Real good. I did. Clean-shaven, lean but solid, tailored suit. Confidence wasn't something I had to wear, it just was. I sipped my drink by the window for most of the night, watching the dance floor. Jake twirled his bride with that goofball grin he'd always had. Joy. Real joy. It didn't make me bitter. It made me hopeful. Then I felt it, that shift in the air, like a cold draft crawling under your skin. I turned, and there she was, Natalie, alone, standing near the bar, not a drink in her hand, just wringing her fingers, staring at me like I was a ghost. She looked nothing like the woman I'd married. Her once perfect hair, now limp and unstyled, makeup uneven, eyes hollow. The dress she wore clung too tightly to a frame that had dropped weight in all the wrong places. There was no sparkle, no game, just shame. She took a step toward me, slow, hesitant. I could see her mouth moving before the words reached me. Aaron, please. Can we talk? The room dimmed around me. Not physically, but in that way where the noise blurs and time stalls. People were still laughing, dancing, eating, but all I heard was her voice. All I saw was her face and the weight behind it. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just sipped my bourbon and looked her in the eye. We did talk, I said, voice low but razor sharp. I just wasn't supposed to hear it. Her lips parted like she might cry, or defend herself, or say something that could rewrite the past. But nothing came out, and I didn't wait for it. I turned and walked away. I moved toward the exit, nodding at a few familiar faces. On my way through the lobby, I caught a glimpse of someone sitting quietly in the corner, wrinkled, hunched, eyes dull behind oversized glasses. Carol. She was a shell of who she used to be. No makeup, no flashy jewelry, just a thick sweater draped around thin shoulders and a cane leaning against the chair beside her. I'd heard rumors, minor stroke, nerve issues, possible early signs of dementia. She looked up at me, eyes widened. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just stared, like a child watching the door close on their last chance at forgiveness. I didn't stop, didn't nod, didn't even blink. I walked past her like she didn't exist, because to me, she didn't. Out in the parking lot, the cold night air bit into my skin, but it felt refreshing, like shedding a layer that had clung too long. I sat on the hood of my rental car, staring up at the stars. A year ago, I would have dreamt about this moment, replayed it in my head with epic speeches and dramatic one-liners. Back then, I wanted justice to be loud, earth-shattering, public unforgettable. But I learned something since. Justice isn't loud. It's not a gavel slamming down or a courtroom erupting in gasps. It's quiet. It's in the silence of an ignored phone call, the empty inbox, the quiet dignity of walking away from what tried to destroy you. Justice is Natalie standing alone in the corner of a room full of people she once fooled. It's Carol realizing no one's calling to check in anymore. It's me whole, healthy, at peace, never looking back. Justice isn't loud. It's quiet, icy, and final. Chapter 10. The Lesson. The wind was cold, sharp, biting at my cheeks as I stood alone on the cliffside, overlooking the vast expanse of the Pacific. My new home was tucked into a rugged stretch of Northern California coastline, far from the ghost towns of my past, far from the suffocating memories that once clung to me like a second skin. The ocean roared beneath me, a raw, endless force that somehow felt like a reflection of the storm I'd survived. The sun was setting, casting golden streaks across the sky, turning the clouds into fiery canvases. It was beautiful, fierce, and utterly indifferent to anything but its own nature. I breathed in deeply. The salt air filled my lungs and cleared my mind. It had been a long road, years of sweat, pain, and quiet battles fought in the shadows of my soul. I thought betrayal broke me. But standing here now, with the vast horizon stretching out ahead of me, I realized something far more important had happened. It built me. I pulled my jacket tighter around my shoulders as my mind drifted back through the years, the nights spent in the darkness, trying to swallow the sharp taste of deceit. The silence after hearing Natalie's words to my mother. The cold emptiness of packing my bags without a word, leaving behind everything I'd thought was solid and real. I remember the nights at the motel, the therapy sessions, the gym where I hammered my pain into muscle, repurposing every ounce of heartbreak into strength. In the courtroom, where the truth landed like a hammer blow, shattering the fragile illusions that once kept me chained. I remember the sting of my mother's voice, angry and bitter, and the way Natalie's emails poured into my inbox, desperate and hollow. All those moments led here, to this moment. The cliff's edge was narrow, grass bending and rustling underfoot. I took a step closer and looked down at the churning waters below, a metaphor for the chaos I'd waded through, the darkness I'd faced and survived. I whispered into the wind, my voice steady, certain. Loyalty is a weapon in the wrong hands. I closed my eyes for a second, feeling the weight of that. But I just learned how to wield it. My fingers brushed a smooth stone at my feet, worn by time and tide. I picked it up, turning it over slowly. Loyalty had been my greatest gift and my heaviest burden. To love someone unconditionally, to trust, to give everything, to believe in the person you vowed to stand by through storms. But when that loyalty is twisted, when it's used as a leash, a trap, a tool to justify betrayal, that's where the pain becomes unbearable. I had been the loser in their eyes, the fool who stayed loyal while they laughed behind my back. Yet, loyalty hadn't destroyed me. It had been my armor, my guide, my redemption. I let the stone drop back onto the ground with a soft thud. In the months since the fallout, I'd built a life anchored in truth, strength, and quiet confidence. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. My new job challenged me in ways I hadn't expected. The friends I made here didn't carry baggage or judgment. The mornings started with purpose, the nights ended with peace. And best of all, I was whole again. A soft chime buzzed in my pocket. I pulled out my phone and saw a message from Haley, the librarian I'd been seeing casually since moving here. Simple, no pressure. Coffee tomorrow? Found a new book I think you'd like. I smiled a real smile and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. I gazed out once more at the endless ocean and the fiery horizon. A thought struck me, then, the lesson I had learned carved deep into my bones. Betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can build a man no one will ever break again. The sky darkened, stars beginning to pierce the twilight. I stood there, silent, steady, not bitter, not defeated, but reborn.